Virginia Natural Gas is getting ready to install the latest segment of a 200-mile-long pipeline running from Quantico into Hampton Roads. Part of the new pipeline will run underneath Colonna shipyard in Norfolk, and the shipyard wants nothing to do with it. Robert Boyd has more on today's developments.
Well, David, today Colonna shipyard held a press conference talking about how dangerous this pipeline can be. Then, just a few hours later, Virginia Natural Gas held their own press conference saying it will be the safest piece of pipe in the state.
What they are attempting to do here is just plain fundamentally wrong. It's unsafe. It should have never been approved in the first place, and it's wrong.
Bill Colonna's family has owned Colonna shipyard for the past 143 years. He says the new pipeline being installed by Virginia Natural Gas is unforgivable.
The problem is, if you had a leak, a pinhole or anything in the gas line, and this gas escaped, you've got a problem. An atomic bomb going off.
Virginia Natural Gas says the shipyard's opinions couldn't be further from the truth.
This is the safest piece of pipe that will have ever been built in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Virginia Natural Gas President Jim Kibler says the utility is meeting and in many cases exceeding every safety requirement.
This pipeline is being buried at a depth of 80 feet at the Colonna shipyard, which is 20 times more than federal law requires. In order for there to be an explosion, you would have to have someone essentially dig into the pipeline. At 80 feet deep, who's going to dig into this pipeline?
Colonna shipyard also blames Virginia Natural Gas for sneaking the project through without properly informing or notifying the public.
Our community did not know about this. There were no public notices.
Everyone along this route got notice and had an opportunity to come and ask questions about the project.
Colonna shipyard even blamed the government for allowing the pipeline to be approved.
If you want to tell me or convince me or persuade me there will never be an accident, I think you're fools.
But Virginia Natural Gas says the pipeline is not only safe, it's very much needed.
This last piece is really important for our region to ensure the reliability of our gas system on the coldest winter days. 2 circuit courts have said it's an emergency, and the State Corporation Commission has ruled that it's vitally important to our region and to our customers.
Now, the attempt to stop the pipeline has already been shot down in Norfolk Circuit Court, which means Virginia Natural Gas has the green light. They plan to start construction in November. Live in the studio, Robert Boyd, 13 News Now.